Well, the excitement for me started listening to shortwave broadcasts, listening in the dark and watching the tubes glow, and then hearing places from all around the world that really intrigued me. And then the idea of being able to talk back to them just really excited me.
My excitement for the hobby came from Anthony's enthusiasm because he is the person that got me started in it. And then his enthusiasm was contagious.
It's always been somewhat of a mystery, kind of like the unknown, when I would hear voices from around the world and the shortwave receptions I would pick up. It was just fascinating to me.
The fact that you communicate with someone else, and especially when it's a DX, a far distance, so like another country, it's nice to know what's going on there and stuff like that.
To communicate with others and to do so with people who were at the far reaches, whether they were in Siberia or at the South Pole, in India, or elsewhere, and establish friendships that have lasted, in my case now, through a lifetime.
From the publishers of CQ Magazine.
Hello, CQ20, CQ20, CQ20.
NRC, this is K8ODP.
We'll show you the shack a little bit.
Oscar, CQ Oscar 13.
Into DVQ, into HGR.
A CQ Video Operating Guide.
Getting started in ham radio.
Welcome to the exciting world of ham radio. If you've just passed your exam or just received your license, congratulations. You're now a part of the world's greatest hobby.
But you're not really a ham radio operator until you have a ham radio to operate. This program will help you get started in choosing your equipment, setting up your station, and getting on the air.
CQ Oscar 13.
Our show is organized around the 4 most common types of first stations that new hams put together. The handheld station, in which your entire ham shack can fit in a briefcase or a pocketbook. The mobile station, consisting of 1 or more radios that are intended for use in a car, but are also perfectly at home. The computer station, in which a personal computer becomes an essential part of ham radio communications. And the HF station, ham radio's traditional starting point.
WA2 Victor, Queen Whiskey, over.
We'll also pass along some advice on choosing a rig, laying out your station, and putting it all together safely. In between, we'll hear from a variety of hams about their first stations.
My very first station was a 2-watt Heathkit, an HW8, I believe it was. And I didn't make many contacts with it, with the 2 watts, but they were all CW, of course, but the first one I made was in Oklahoma.
If you're like many new hams, this is your first station, a handheld VHF or UHF transceiver. Most hams call it an HT, and it's a good choice for starting out. You can take it anywhere, and with a few accessories, turn it into a mobile rig, or even a base station.
Some of today's handhelds are small enough to fit inside a handbag or briefcase. But they're packed with the same features you'll find on many full-sized radios, including memories to store your most often used frequencies, special tones to access so-called PL'd repeaters, and a touch-tone pad for making auto-patch phone calls.
Hi, Marty. This is Gary.
Yeah.
We're just about done over here, and we thought we'd let you know we're going to be on our way over to your place pretty soon.
Bill Lyon, KD4LLQ, uses a handheld as his entire station. He's built a special mounting clip for the dashboard of his car and modified the belt clip on the back of the radio. When Bill gets into his car, he plugs in an outside antenna, power from the car's battery, and an external speaker mic. Instant mobile rig.
Nice sunshiny day, and just thought I would see who was on the repeater today.
Kevin Littlewood, KC4THW, isn't old enough to drive yet, But he still operates mobile with his handheld bicycle mobile. Kevin and his dad mounted his HT in a water bottle holder. They put an antenna on the back of the bike and wired up a headset microphone. Now Kevin can talk while he rides and still keep both hands on the handlebars.
Once I get my code, I'll probably join you on the HF band, but
As you can see, a handheld radio is very flexible. Just a few accessories will turn your HT into a full-fledged mobile station.
An external antenna is probably most important. Radio waves have a hard time squeezing out your windows. A simple magnet mount antenna will do for a temporary installation.
There are several other options for permanent antennas. The best spot for any mobile antenna is the center of your roof. The second best is your trunk lid. Both provide an expansive metal underneath for a ground plane.
Next, you'll probably want to get power from the car's battery. With some radios, that may mean buying a separate power pack. And while many people simply use a cigarette lighter plug, it's best to run a separate line, with its own fuse, directly from the car battery.
Now you've almost got a mobile rig, with external power and an external antenna. But you're still stuck holding the whole radio in your hand while you drive. That's inconvenient and unsafe. So you might consider an external mic and speaker. Often they come in a single package.
Finally, since most handhelds run a top power of 3.5 to 5 watts, you may want to add a linear amplifier to boost your output. Several models are made especially for use with HTs, and they'll typically give you 25 to 30 watts out, about what you'd get from an average mobile rig.
Even with all those extras, your signal will probably need more help. At VHF and UHF frequencies, including the 2-meter and 70-centimeter bands, radio signals generally don't travel much beyond the horizon. That's called line-of-sight communications, and it's why repeaters have become so popular.
A repeater is an automatic relay station. It listens on one frequency and retransmits everything it hears on another. But it has very big ears and a big mouth, too. It's kind of like a giant on a mountaintop who shouts out everything he hears from down in the valley, or even over on the next mountain.
Since the repeater listens and talks at the same time, it has to receive and transmit on different frequencies. The difference between a repeater's receive and transmit frequency is called its offset or split. The standard split on 2 meters is 600 kilohertz. That means a repeater that transmits, for example, on 147.06 megahertz, listens either up 600 on 147.66 or down 600 on 146.46.
The ARRL repeater directory tells you whether a repeater's offset is minus, down 600, or plus, up 600. There are different standard splits on other bands, but don't worry about that now. Most of today's radios are smart enough that if you set your receive frequency, the radio can figure out your transmit frequency all by itself. On older radios, it's a little tougher. You may have to flick a switch to plus or minus. Keep in mind that your receive frequency is the same as the repeater's transmit frequency.
Sometimes you won't be able to key up a repeater even if you're within range and you're transmitting and receiving on the right frequencies. A likely reason is that some repeaters won't begin to transmit until they hear a special subaudible tone, which most people call CTCSS or PL. This tone access is used either to avoid interference in congested areas or to limit repeater access to members of the sponsoring group. The repeater directory lists the tone frequencies of many tone-controlled but open-access repeaters.
One popular feature of many repeaters is auto-patch. Kind of like a cellular phone on a party line, it lets you use your mobile or handheld rig to make personal telephone calls. Of course, there's no privacy and you can't discuss business. But it can't be beat for calling home to say you're stuck in traffic or to get help if you need it. Check with your repeater sponsor for specific details.
This is a good time to mention that repeaters are expensive to buy and maintain. So if you're going to be a regular user of a particular machine, you should also join the club or other group that keeps it on the air. Next, we'll take a look at rigs designed for use in your car.
About a year and a half ago, my son Brian and I were listening to a scanner. I had spent my entire life playing sports, and Brian is a musician, and we were looking for an activity that we could do as father and son. After listening to the scanner for a while on 2 meters, we went out to field day. I knew what to expect. Brian had never shown any interest in radio, but was bitten by the bug. He thought it was the most fascinating thing in the world. And it turned out to be a pleasant surprise, because amateur radio has turned out to be the one father-son activity that we both have grown with, and it has brought us closer together. It has, we found that we're both teaching each other something.
Handheld radios come packed with all sorts of features. But just take a look at some mobile rigs. There are literally dozens to choose from, and each one's a little different. We can't describe them all here, but we will try to go over some of the most common and most important features.
One of the first choices you'll have to make is which band or bands you want your radio to cover. While there are some mobile rigs for the HF or shortwave bands, most hams who operate mobile use one or more VHF or UHF amateur bands. The most popular of these is 2 meters, from 144 to 148 megahertz. It's home to most FM repeaters and packet radio activity. Virtually all dual-band and multi-band radios cover the 2-meter band.
Most dual-band rigs also cover 70 centimeters, a huge band which stretches from 420 to 450 megahertz. But most repeater and packet activity here is between 440 and 450. So most FM rigs cover only that segment of the band. 440 is more of a line-of-sight band than 2 meters, so repeater range is more limited and the band is less crowded.
Other bands to consider include 222 to 225 megahertz and the 23 centimeter band from 1240 to 1300 megahertz. These two bands include segments where novices may operate voice, making them the only places on the ham bands where all U.S. amateurs may operate. Of course, mobile radios don't have to be used in your car. Many hams use them at home too. Just as handhelds can be converted to mobile rigs can be turned into base stations. Simply add an antenna on the roof, a 12-volt power supply, and if you'd like, a desk microphone or a computer. There are VHF and UHF radios designed for home use, but they're used mostly by hams who have gone beyond repeaters. You see, there is a whole world of other things to do on the VHF and UHF bands.
There are multi-mode rigs which let you operate single sideband and Morse code. With these, you can try your hand at moon bounce, meteor scatter, or round-the-world communications by ham radio satellite.
Good rest of the weekend. DJ 8LAV in northern Germany. This is N2 AM clear. Bye-bye.
There's also amateur television and amateur TV repeaters. But one of the most popular uses for a home station on VHF or UHF today is the subject of our next topic, packet radio.
Since I got my license, my mom had to take me to meetings and different club activities, and she got to know some of the people, and everyone knew her as Lenny's mom. So she decided one day to get her license so she wouldn't be known as Lenny's mom anymore, and known as now N8PZN. So she basically saw how much fun I was having, so she wanted to have some fun too.
Personal computers are becoming a nearly essential part of almost every ham shack today. Often they're accessories used for logging, keeping track of awards and QSL cards, and even for controlling radios and antennas. But for many hams, a computer is the centerpiece of their station.
Some hams use computers for radio teletype and AMTOR communications on the HF bands. But by far the most popular way for hams to communicate by computer is on VHF with something called packet radio.
The dictionary says a packet is a small package or bundle, and in packet radio, Information from your computer is sent out on the radio in small bundles or packets. Hams use packet radio to send each other messages, to get the latest news and information, to exchange computer programs over the air, and of course to rag chew or just chat. Packet networks provide links over long distances, either for rag chewing or automatic message forwarding. And packet satellites can carry your message around the world in less than an hour.
Getting on the air with packet radio is easy. There are 4 main components to a packet station. And if you already have a computer and a 2-meter ham rig, you're more than halfway there. Standard communication programs will work fine, although there are some specialized packet programs available. And just about any computer will do the job. In fact, you can get by with a so-called dumb terminal that you can pick up at flea markets for $20 or less.
Next comes the radio. Again, nearly anyone will do. Most packet activity is on the 2-meter band, but if you have a radio on 220 or 440, you can probably find people on packet there too. Item number 3 is an antenna, outside if possible, for whatever band you're operating on. In most cases, a simple ground plane will do fine.
Last comes the piece that puts the puzzle together and makes it all work. It's called a TNC, for Terminal Node Controller, and it does 2 things. 1, it's a modem, translating computer signals into radio signals and vice versa. Second, it has all the software, or instructions, that your computer needs to make and maintain contact with other packet stations. The TNC connects between the serial port on your computer and the microphone and speaker jacks on your radio.
Once you've made all the connections, you can try to tune in some packet signals. But where do you tune? While active packet frequencies vary from place to place, you're almost certainly assured of finding something in nearly every part of the country on the 2-meter band between 145.01 MHz and 145.09. On the 220 band, listen between 223.40 and 223.50. And on 70 centimeters, tune around near 441.00 MHz. Check the ARRL repeater directory for listings in your area. Here's what you'll be listening for.
Now here's the tricky part. Your TNC is just like Goldilocks in the story of the 3 bears. If the porridge is too hot, or your radio's volume is too high, it won't swallow anything. The same thing will happen if the porridge is too cold or the receive volume is too low. So what's just right? It's hard to explain with any precision, but a basic rule of thumb is that the signal should be just loud enough to be annoying. Experiment until you start seeing things on your computer screen.
This is what received packets will look like on your screen when you're just monitoring and aren't connected to someone. You'll see the call signs of the sending and receiving stations, plus either information for the computer or part of a message. The computer sends out a packet whenever the Enter key is pressed, or when a certain number of characters have been typed in. You might see the same packet repeated several times. That's because the receiving TNC won't accept a packet unless it's been received correctly.
And the sending station will repeat each packet until it gets an acknowledgement from the receiver that it got through okay. This is all handled automatically, but it may be what's going on if you hear your transmitter keying on and off by itself and nothing is showing up on your screen. Several packet stations can communicate at the same time on the same frequency. They don't interfere with each other though, and when you're connected to someone, all you see on your screen are the packets from that station.
In packet radio, you don't make contact with another station, you connect. To do it, simply type C and the call sign of the station you want. Then press Return or Enter. Your computer and the TNC will take care of the rest. When you're connected, you'll get a message on your screen and everything you type after that will go to that station.
If the station you're talking to isn't in direct contact range, you can use packet repeaters, known as digipeaters, nodes, or switches, depending on the network or networks in your area. Each of these works a little differently, so your best bet is to monitor other people on the frequency and see how they make long-range contacts, or connect to someone close to you and ask how it's done.
When you're finished, you can't just say 73 and walk away. One of you has to tell your TNC that you're done. Usually you press Control-C or some other key to return to the command mode. That lets the TNC know the next thing you type is an instruction for it, not a message for the other station. Then type D for disconnect and hit return. Your TNC will then say goodbye to the other TNC and end the contact.
Most packet users do more than simply chat with their friends. One of the most popular uses of packet radio is the worldwide network of packet bulletin board systems. A PBBS carries news items, personal messages, equipment for sale notices, and much, much more. There are several different types of bulletin boards out there, and each is a little different. But every board should tell you how to get help anytime you sign in.
You connect to a bulletin board just as you'd connect to any other station. Most BBSs have a number after their call sign. This lets the computer know that you're connecting to the bulletin board and not the person who runs it. So sign in. Follow the on-screen directions to list and read messages or download files. And when you're done, simply type a B alone on a line, then press return. Most systems will automatically sign you off.
Finally, there's something called Packet Cluster, which is unlike anything else on packet radio. It's used mostly by DXers to let each other know where they've spotted foreign stations. But many clusters also include a lot of other information, including weather reports, propagation reports from WWV, QSL information, and much more. You can also chat with or leave mail for other users.
Unlike traditional packet bulletin boards, on which one person at a time connects, does what he wants, and disconnects while everyone else waits, packet clusters accommodate many users at the same time. Here, users connect and stay connected. They can direct messages to other users. They can download information from the database, or simply read the mail. For more information on Packet Cluster, contact your local system operator, a local DXer, or a DX club. They might also help you with our next topic, the HF station.
My first station was in an apartment complex. I had a dipole, a wire antenna, at 18 feet off the ground, and a Drake transmitter and receiver, crystal controlled. That was my first novice station.
CQDX. If your idea of ham radio fun is talking to people across the country and around the world, then you'll probably want to consider an HF station. The 9 ham bands between 1.8 and 30 megahertz are where you'll find most DXing, contesting, and long-distance message relays. Of course, to operate in these bands, you need to have a license that required passing a Morse code exam. This includes Novice, Technician Plus, and all higher class licenses.
The basic components of an HF station are much like those for VHF. First and foremost is the radio. Today, most hams use combined transmitters and receivers called transceivers. But some separate transmitter-receiver pairs are still out there going strong. And they're often good bargains at flea markets. The radio's basic job is to translate electrical signals into radio waves at a specific frequency and to convert incoming radio waves back to electrical signals. The signals you put in may come from a microphone, a code key, or a computer. Those coming out can go directly back to a computer or something that changes them into sound waves, such as a set of headphones or a speaker.
On the RF end, you'll need an antenna to put your signals into the air and to pluck out the other guys. Of all of these essential accessories, the only ones likely to come with your radio are a microphone and a speaker. If you're going to use Morse code, you'll need a key. It can be as simple as a hand key or as complex as a contester's memory keyer.
You can also send Morse code to your rig with a computer, as long as it has the right program to translate your keystrokes into code characters. Some computer programs can also copy Morse code, but none is 100% accurate. It's best to listen along with your computer. Between the two of you, you'll get the message.
There are 3 basic types of HF antennas that most hams use. The easiest and cheapest is the wire antenna. A long wire or an 80-meter dipole with an antenna tuner can give you a reasonable signal on just about any HF band.
Some hams like to use vertical antennas. They're especially good for DXing because they have a low angle of radiation. That means more of your signal heads toward the horizon than straight up. That makes for longer hops when the signal hits the ionosphere and bounces back to Earth. Vertical antennas don't take up much space, but to be most efficient and effective, they should sit over a network of buried ground radials. And they do need space. There are some verticals without radials for use in tight quarters. They're not as efficient, but they're a lot better than nothing.
The most serious drawback of both of these antennas, though, is that they're not directional. You can't aim your signal in a specific direction or turn away from a strong station on a nearby frequency who's wiping out the ham you're trying to hear. To do that, you need an antenna you can turn. The most common are Yagis or beams and quads, which look like big spider webs. These antennas generally need to live on top of a tower. And you'll need a rotator in order to turn the antenna from inside your shack. Unless, of course, you put up a rotatable tower. Even a modest tower and beam can start running into money. So many hams get their feet wet with wire antennas or verticals. Before you put up anything, check with your local building inspector for rules about antennas and antenna support structures, what we know as towers. Your town may limit tower height or require a building permit before you begin. Even if you live in an apartment or a condo that bans visible antennas altogether, there's always a way to get on the air. Various magazines and manuals have all sorts of ideas for hidden and indoor antennas.
Whatever type of antenna you choose, you need a feed line to carry your signals between the radio and the antenna. Shielded coaxial cable, called coax, is the feed line most commonly used by hams on HF. Most modern ham rigs are designed for 52-ohm coax, such as RG58 or RG8. Whenever possible, the thicker RG8 is your best choice.
Next, you have to connect the cable to the radio and the antenna. The most common connector for HF work is called the PL259. Most radios, antennas, and accessories come equipped for it. The PL259 is also okay for connections on 6 meters and 2 meters.
Now you're almost ready to go on the air, but first there are a few accessories you shouldn't be without. An SWR meter, a dummy load, and a low-pass filter.
The SWR meter tells you how much of your output power is making it into your antenna and how much is being reflected back down the feed line. If your SWR is higher than 3 to 1, it can damage your transmitter or cause it to shut down. You should either adjust the length of your antenna or put an antenna tuner in the line between your rig and the antenna. Then, tune it for the lowest SWR reading.
The next accessory on your must-have list is a dummy load. It's usually a can filled with transformer oil that absorbs your radio's output power. Use a dummy load while tuning up a tube-type radio or for tests that don't require a signal on the air.
Finally, a low-pass filter. This device captures and suppresses any signals above 30 megahertz that may accidentally escape from your radio. A low-pass filter is vital if you live in a built-up area and have neighbors with TV sets or stereos. It will prevent many cases of interference.
If you're using all of these accessories, here's how to hook them up. Use short coaxial jumper cables between each piece. Run the first jumper from your transmitter's antenna jack to a coax switch. From one switch position, run a line to your dummy load. From another, connect a jumper to your SWR meter.
CQ.
Follow that with the antenna tuner and the low-pass filter. Finally, hook in the feed line to the antenna.
Next, some tips on choosing your first rig.
My first station, this goes back to 1952, with this used old jalopy $35 receiver and my homebrew transmitter and a piece of wire with an antenna tuner, I was able to work my first station, who happened to be somebody in Kenosha, Wisconsin, on 80 meters. And I was so excited that I almost dropped the transmitter on the floor.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Price is high and price is low. I've looked and looked, but I don't know. Please, help me pick a radio.
Got the new rig blues? Chase them away with Rig-O-Matic, the computer program that tells you what you need, where to buy it, and how much to pay for it. Plus, it slices, it dices, it chops up your coax and calls CQ on 20 meters. It does everything.
Don't you wish it was that simple? But sooner or later, you're going to have to decide what kind of radio you want, whether to buy new or used, and whether to buy at a flea market, in a store, or by mail or phone order.
Good evening, Universal Radio. How may I help you?
Most hams buy most of their equipment by mail. Often it's their only choice for new equipment. Many times it's also their best choice for price.
Chris Peckham, WG2W, is the ARRL technical coordinator for Northern New Jersey. He's conducted several convention forums on setting up your first station.
So, if the item is in stock, you can have it in a few days. On the other hand, if it's not in stock, you can sometimes have a long wait, and your charge card bill may arrive before the rig does. Most mail order firms, though, are also somebody's local ham store. They have a showroom in their hometown where you can get your hands on equipment and sometimes even play with it. See how it works, whether you like the feel of the knobs, and how it looks and everything. Some dealers also sell at HamFests. When you're buying from a dealer at these ham radio flea markets, you can usually get the same type of guarantees that you can get in the store. The main risk that you have at a HamFest is buying equipment from just another ham. It's usually not a problem. Most hams are honest. Many dealers also offer used equipment which they will have checked out and will guarantee in some form.
Many new hams, in fact, do start out with a used piece of equipment. No mystery here. Simply the fact is that one can save a substantial amount of money. You are going to have, in most cases, a savings of 40, 50, 60% off of what an equivalent new unit might go for. So it can be a very substantial savings.
Fred Osterman, N8EKU, is president of Universal Radio in Reynoldsburg, Ohio.
If possible, at least get up to a solid-state rig, possibly with digital readout. This, of course, gives you precise frequency accuracy, and as a new operator, the first thing you don't want to do is slide out of the band. But it's generally worth the trip if you can go and see and look and feel the radio before purchasing it. But frankly, that's just not possible for everyone. So mail order becomes the next choice. But if you do order from a dealer that's been around, it's reputable, really there should not be any problem.
But how do you know which dealers are reputable? Osterman says ask around and watch the magazine ads.
In most cases, if you've seen their ad month after month, year after year, chances are pretty good that these people are going to be here a year from now. One other question that you might want to ask when purchasing from a dealer, and that is, are you an authorized dealer for product X? This is important. If you do have a problem, it's again nice to be able to go back to a dealer who is in a position, who is authorized to support, service the product, versus someone who is going to take your money and say goodbye.
Next, some hints on setting up your shack.
Yeah, my first station was sort of built in a bookcase in an apartment. Apartments are very cramped for space, so I had a very simple HF radio. It was a low-powered radio, so I didn't have to worry about interfering with the neighbors' televisions or with even my television in my apartment. I strung up a very simple antenna and was able to talk to stations all around the country. I was sort of surprised that it worked that well.
A ham shack can go anywhere there's available space, from the corner of a bedroom, to an attic, to a basement shared with the washing machine, even your garage, or the front seat of a van. Where you put yours depends, of course, on how much or how little space you have. Your most important consideration is finding a spot that's convenient and comfortable. Chances are you'll be spending a lot of time there.
O-Z-C. My name is Laura.
An attic shack gives you the benefit of a short cable run to your antennas, while a basement shack makes it easier to hook up a good RF ground. On the other hand, you could build a real shack. Whatever room you choose, try to set up your equipment on a large, sturdy surface, such as an office desk. Many hams today are using computer hutches and other desktop shelf units to hold their gear. Arrange your station so that the equipment you use most often is within easy reach and close to any other gear to which it may be connected. Be sure to leave yourself a place to write and some storage for logbooks and other items. Again, think comfort and convenience.
And don't forget that every now and then you're going to want to rearrange or rewire something, and that means getting behind your gear. If you have the room, leave enough space in back to walk in and work on all those wires and cables that hook everything together. If you can't do that, make sure there's enough slack on your cables to let you pull out the rig and work behind it.
Another consideration is getting your antenna cables out to your antenna. You need some sort of access from your shack to the outside world. A minute ago, we said that a basement shack makes it easy to hook up a good RF ground. It's important to know just what that is. The purpose of an RF ground is to provide a low impedance path to Earth for any stray RF energy that may be floating around your shack. A poor RF ground is often the cause of many interference problems, not to mention strange behavior by your equipment, and little RF bites or shocks whenever you touch a piece of gear or get too close to the microphone while you're transmitting.
Here are some grounding do's and don'ts, starting with the don'ts. Don't use a hot water pipe because the water heater may insulate it from ground. Never use a natural gas pipe. And don't rely on your electrical ground. That's the center screw on an outlet cover or the third wire in your electric cords. A ground wire that's more than a quarter wavelength long at any frequency on which you're transmitting acts just like an antenna. Your electrical wires run all over your house and straight into your TV and your stereo, and maybe your neighbors too.
What is a good RF ground? Your best bet, if you have the room and if your house has metal water pipes, is to locate your shack as close as you can to the point where your main water pipe enters the house. Connect all of your gear to a common point and run a short, heavy-gauge ground wire to the water pipe on the street side of the meter. Next best is connecting that single ground wire to a cold water pipe. If you can't get a good RF ground directly, you should consider a counterpoise or artificial ground. You can buy one commercially or make one yourself.
There's one more type of ground to worry about, lightning ground. The last thing you want is for a bolt of lightning to zip into your antenna, down your feed line, and into your radio. If that happens, you'll end up with fried radio. And if you're operating at the time, add a course of baked ham.
So never operate during an electrical storm. When the storm is approaching, unplug your antennas from your rigs and ground them if you can. A lightning arrestor or static discharge eliminator in each feed line is also useful. Use the gas discharge type. It keeps static charges from building up on your antenna and will make the antenna less inviting to lightning.
A tower should always be grounded at its base, and the tower ground should never come into your shack. Send it straight to one or more ground rods buried 6 to 8 feet in the ground. Speaking of tower safety, consider an anti-climbing shield, especially if you have children. WA2VQW protects his kids and his tower from each other with a simple plywood shield that locks into place.
Lightning isn't the only type of electricity that needs respect. The 110 volts in your wall socket probably kill more people each year than lightning does. And many ham rigs operate with much higher voltages inside. For safety, always turn off and unplug a piece of gear before you work on it. If you must work with the power on, wear rubber-soled shoes and keep one hand in your pocket. This helps keep you from becoming the shortest path to ground for 100 or 1,000 volts.
If you're not sure what you're doing, ask a more experienced ham for help. And remember the motto that hams have lived by for nearly a century: safety first.
My first station was the HW7, which is a 3-band, low-power radio running 1.5 watts, CW, and my first contact was a WB9 station. I have no idea what the rest of his call is, on 40 meters. I made that contact and I got so excited I lost it. So, the simple station worked very well.
It's a lot of fun just to hands-on to put something together and build it and get it to work.
Sooner or later, just about every ham needs to solder something. And while you don't have to know how to solder to get your license, it sure does come in handy for getting on the air. Connectors need to be soldered to wires and cables. Wires break and need to be fixed, and who knows? You might even decide to build something.
It's important to know the right way to solder, because poor soldering can cause all kinds of problems, including interference on your neighbor's TV set. Bob Wilson, N2DVQ, is a reliability engineer for a major electronics company. Analyzing solder failures is part of his job. Bob is going to talk us through some soldering basics, while Dwight Smith, N2FMC, demonstrates.
I'm going to start at the very beginning. This is a soldering iron. This is the handle where you hold it. This is the tip where you don't. Soldering iron tips can get as hot as 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Most irons are rated for both power and temperature. For amateur work, a 700 degree Fahrenheit tip is probably the best. The wattage of the iron measures how quickly it will heat the surface you're going to solder, what we call the work. A 45 watt soldering iron is fine for most amateur projects, but it's handy to have a 100 watt soldering gun available when working on large materials and antenna connectors. You also need a stand to hold your iron when you're not soldering. Some rosin core solder, never use acid core plumber's solder, plus a small sponge and some type of solder remover. A vise or something else to hold the work still is also important. Before you start to solder, you need to prepare the tip of the iron for the best heat transfer. To prepare a new tip, plug in the iron and let it heat until solder melts on the tip. Then apply a liberal amount of solder all over the tip and 1/4 to 1/2 inch down as well. Clean off the excess with a damp sponge. The tip should now be shiny all over and you are ready to solder. Rule number 1 is that soldering is only for making electrical connections, not for physically holding things together. Make sure you have a good mechanical joint before you solder. Also, make sure the surfaces you're going to solder are clean. Rule number 2, heat the work, not the solder. If the surface to be soldered isn't hot enough, the solder won't stick or will produce the dreaded cold joint. More on that later. Now, hold the soldering iron on an angle. About 45 degrees is best. This puts more of the tip on the work and transfers more heat than holding it straight down. First, tin any wires you're going to solder. That means applying a small amount of solder to the wire itself. Now, to make the connection, start by heating the larger mass. If you don't, the solder may not adhere to both surfaces. Here's a hint. If you put a little bit of solder between the tip and the work while it's heating, it'll help to maximize the heat transfer and will also tell you when the work is ready to solder. The solder starts out balled up on the tip of the iron. When it's hot enough, the solder wets or flows into the joint. Now, add more solder. Apply it to the work, not the tip. When the joint is covered with solder, Remove the solder first, then the iron. Clean off the tip with your damp sponge and put the iron in its holder. Now let the joint cool. Don't try to rush things. A solder joint usually cools in no more than 10 seconds. If you blow on it or move it before it's cool, you'll probably cause a cold solder joint and have to start over again. Here's what your finished joint should look like. It should be shiny and smooth. You should be able to see the outline of the materials you've joined, and the solder itself should have a feathered, tapered shape. If the joint looks dull and grainy, you've got a cold joint. The solder here is brittle, may be a poor conductor, and will eventually fall apart. To warm up a cold solder joint, reheat the connection until the solder melts. Then, add a small amount of fresh solder and let it cool slowly. It's really not that hard to solder well. In fact, if you're using the right iron and the right tip, if you've prepared the tip and work properly, and have the patience to wait while the work heats up and cools down, soldering can be easy and fun.
Well, it's time for us to tie the ribbons, pull the big switch, say 73, and all those other strange and wonderful things that hams like to say instead of gotta go now. But we're about out of time, and besides, there's a contest coming up.
We hope you've learned something here about setting up your first station and getting started in ham radio. But this is only an introduction. There's plenty of additional information available if you'd like to learn more.
CQ's Getting Started series of video operating guides includes separate programs on specific aspects of ham radio. Titles include Getting Started in DXing, Getting Started in Packet Radio, and Getting Started in Amateur Satellites. Obviously, we recommend them.
2 books no ham should be without are the ARRL Handbook and the ARRL Operating Manual. Ham magazines are a continuing source of ideas and information. Of course, we recommend CQ and, for the technically oriented, Communications Quarterly.
We also recommend membership in the American Radio Relay League, or if you don't live in the United States, your country's national ham radio organization. ARRL membership includes their monthly magazine, QST.
But your best source of help is other hams, and especially ham radio clubs. The ARRL can provide the name of a club near you. We couldn't have produced this program without the help of 3 clubs in particular: the Raleigh Amateur Radio Society in North Carolina, and 2 Ohio groups, the Columbus Amateur Radio Association and the Cuyahoga Falls Amateur Radio Club. We thank them, and we thank you for watching. 73.
The ability to talk to people anywhere from my house, whether it be through HF, through packet radio, through any of those means I can talk to people all over the world, and that's very exciting. In this day of communications, it's free, it's interpersonal, it's fun.
I really get excited about the cutting edge technology that we're trying to develop within the amateur radio community, be it digital, amateur television, and some of the newer modes that are on HF.
There's something different for everybody. There's so many different facets of it, with satellite and packet and DX, and there's slow scan television. I went to college and had an opportunity to try a lot of the different modes, and I still haven't tried everything. So I think it's the diversity that really attracts me to it. You can't get bored. There's always something else you can try.